Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit. This is the final DC Universe beta video, comprising of just some random footage that I was able to take last night before all of the beta servers ended up going down. By the time I was able to do this, the server that Totalbiscuit was on had already been shut, so all I had left was Sergeant Queensbury. But it will give you a little bit of a look at Metropolis as I climb and fly all over it, and it's going to give me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the game itself and my thoughts and hopes for it as we go into the launch, which is going to be happening on the 11th of this month, so that's on Tuesday. Now, I would like to say that this is a good look at the end of beta event. They did have one, but unfortunately it didn't seem to happen on a wide variety of servers. The ones that did happen on it seemed to be much delayed. By the time that they got things going here, it was like 3 a.m. my time, because they were running on Pacific. So I was exhausted by that point. I'd already done 4 hours of StarCraft casting that night, so I couldn't be bothered to wait up any longer. So my apologies for missing that, assuming the damn thing even happened to begin with. But hey, at least I can say they put some effort into putting in end of beta event in, even if it didn't work out so well. It's not something that happened with Blizzard and the Cataclysm beta, I can tell you that. I don't know, I mean, maybe I should feel a bit peeved about the fact that Blizzard didn't do an End of Cataclysm beta. I mean, it was a long beta, and people did work quite hard to test the game. It certainly weren't the majority of people, but there were quite a few people that did do an awful lot. I don't want to blow my own trumpet here by any stretch, but, I mean, come on, really? No end of beta event, just a shutdown without notice? It did leave a sour taste in the mouth. At least these guys put a bit of effort into it. But this will be an opportunity for me to show you a wide variety of other heroes, because they're gathering in Centennial Park right now, near the Superman statue, so that they can apparently take part in the final event. There's also some PvP going on between the heroes and the villains. So you'll get to see a little bit of that, and I might actually take part in it. Yeah, I believe I do take part in a little bit of PvP at the end of this video, so I can show you just a little bit of that. I think I actually beat some dude. Admittedly, I do need a little bit of help in order to make that happen. So, let me talk a little bit about what I've experienced during the DC Universe beta, a few facts that I didn't impart on you beforehand, and I'll try and give you a conclusion based on what I've seen. The first thing I'd like to point out is the fact that I played this beta probably for about 4 or 5 hours. Yeah? You've seen the content. I didn't play much beyond what I recorded. So, you've seen low-level content, a tiny little bit for the heroes in Metropolis, and quite a bit for the villain in Gotham. There are 2 cities within this game, and each of these cities is apparently just larger than Vice City in the original Vice City game. That's from Grand Theft Auto, of course. So, it's fairly large. You'll also notice that you can traverse the entire city via the use of your movement powers. Right now I'm using acrobatics, which looks quite silly on Sergeant Queensbury. These movement abilities also have upgrades. Yeah, they have their own talent trees, and you get access, I think, the first point for that at level 9. So you can take a wide variety of different things, including the ability to speed yourself up, but also the ability to do damage, extra damage while running past people and things like that. So there's a little bit of choice there. I think the game does seem to offer quite a lot of choice in a fairly freeform and undirected fashion. Like, for instance, the game has 4 roles, I think, as far as I'm aware. It's got damage, which, as far as I can tell, everybody can do, just like WoW. And it's also got the controller role, which is all about buffs and debuffs and crowd control. You've got the tank, and you've also got a support role that can provide heals and buffs and things like that. So you've got 2 roles that you have access to. I believe you always have access to damage, and then you've got access to 1 other role. Now, that role is dependent on your power set. So that's the, God, how many were there? Like 6 or 7-ish, I think, power sets. And I've shown you fire, I've shown you ice, there's also nature, there's sorcery, there's mental, and something else that I can't quite remember, whatever. There's also a set of weapons, and these weapon sets combine with your power sets in various ways. So, as you saw, I have the quarterstaff on Totalbiscuit. So the quarterstaff combined with my fire powers by making my fireballs, etc., shoot out of the end of the quarterstaff. There are other ways that they combine. For instance, a lot of my frost powers here with Sergeant Queensbury, since I'm brawling with him, will interact with my enemies by punching them in the gut. What I actually noticed, and you'll see some of this in the footage that I've taken of the other heroes doing battle around Centennial Park in this final PvP event, is stuff like Hand Blast, for instance. Hand Blast seems to interact with powers in a beam-like fashion, so you're shooting beams out of your hands at range. One of the odd things about brawling is the fact that you can punch people, obviously, but your right mouse button attack is actually ranged. So it's a little bit of a weird-ass hybrid kind of thing. You've also seen dual pistols and how that interacts with fire in my collab video. For instance, you're firing fiery bullets instead of normal bullets and things like that. It's pretty neat. I like the way that you seem to have quite a lot of choice to go in different directions, although I would imagine that once you get to raid content and the high-level duo content at the end of the game, there are going to be ways to do it and ways not to do it. But at least as you're going through the leveling, there does appear to be a lot of flexibility with how things work. And you also get a second choice of weapon, so if you screw up and you pick a weapon set that's really not what you're after, you can pick another one. As regards to respecking, I really do not know. Like I said, this is based on my experiences with the game and nothing but, which is fairly limited. But I do like the variance there. I like the idea of, hey, well, I could go with Hand Blast and take Nature if I wanted to, you know, hurl leaves at people. Or I could take a rifle with Frost to fire frost bullets and things like that. It's kind of cool. Now, as regards to the content itself, the leveling content, from what I've seen, is very, very strong, but I've only ever seen the start of it. Yeah? I've seen the lower level content. There's a lot of cool things, like for instance, all of that questing at the start of the game is great. It's really great. The voice acting really adds to it. Oh, hi, Superman's crotch. How are you? Found the Superman statue. You get an achievement for that, as you notice there. It's climbing up to have a better view of the various heroes and villains that are hanging around here. But anyway, the low level content seems really, really good, but I am fearful that it would fall into Age of Conan syndrome. Age of Conan had a great 1 to 20 experience and then sort of petered off, like the voice acting stopped, the areas were more sparse, less well designed. From what I've heard from other beta testers, this is not the case, but I don't want to comment on something that I don't know too much about. It's always a risk when going into new MMOs. It really is. There are some other pieces of content that you can find on YouTube. There's not a huge amount of DC Universe content, and it's not very well viewed, but if you do look for leveling, some people did level higher than me and did put their experiences up. I don't know if they actually commentated them, but you can have a look at some of the missions available, and it does look like they keep it well paced. They don't front load the content. It's very important because front loading content is a bait and switch, effectively, because you're paying for a game. You buy your MMO, you've just dropped £30 or $50 or whatever, and you get your first month free, and if you burn through on the content in a month, then you've got to say, well, was that worth it? Arguably, yes, based on, say, time. If I were to buy an MMO, and I paid £30 for it, and I got 15 or so hours of enjoyment out of it, I would probably think it was worth it. But everyone has their own scale. For instance, if I turn around and say to you, well, I'm entirely okay with there being 1 hour per £2 worth of content. If I was to break it down on a simple monetary scale, then you'd probably turn around and say to me, well, I don't think that's the case.
The smiling face of the statue of Superman looks out over the green fields of Centennial Park. The statue memorializes Superman sacrificing his life to save Metropolis from doomsday. One day there will be a solid gold statue right next to Superman's statue. That's right, a Booster Gold statue.
Oh, please. Quiet, Booster. Horrible, horrible character. Anyway. You would say to me, well, you're wrong. That's not what it's worth at all. And I would say, well, you're correct, and also incorrect, because this is an entirely subjective kind of thing. There's no objective way to turn around and say, well, this is worth X number of dollars, pounds, euros, yen, whatever per hour. That's going to be an entirely personal thing based on your finances, based on how much you think something is worth, and you're never going to be right or wrong about that. It's going to be entirely based on personal choice. So, for me, for instance, I'm okay with paying about £2 per hour of entertainment. I think that's fairly reasonable. But it's not set in stone. Let's be honest here. It's just an arbitrary number that I conjured out of thin air simply for the sake of it. When it comes to MMO content as well, you've also got to look at quality of enjoyment as opposed to quantity. If I played WoW for 5 bazillion hours or whatever, I don't know what my slash played is, and I have no intention of ever finding out. How much of that was really great quality time, and how much of it was just, oh god, gotta grind up the next flask, or gotta do the next daily, or whatever. So, with MMO content, often you play an MMO a lot, but the quality of the content is often a lot lower than a normal single-player game actually would be. It's a possibility. What I find out of the early level content of DC Universe is that the content is strong enough, almost, to be a single-player game. And I do mean almost. It's not quite there, but it's close enough. The quality of the voice acting, great. Quality of the scripting, great. Quality of the combat, almost on the level of a single-player game. Still got a little bit of MMO taint to it. And I say MMO taint because really, MMO combat systems are often some of the worst combat systems when it comes to simple interactivity and how in control of your character you actually feel. WoW is a prime example of that. You press button and things happen. In this game, it's a bit more hack and slash, and as such, it's a little bit more direct, and it does feel more like a single-player game would, but it's still not quite there yet. It doesn't have the complexities of a game like God of War, Prototype, Bayonetta, etc., etc. As you simply can't put that much complexity into a combat system using the current technology and still have it work as an MMO. Indeed, before that, people thought there was no way to even put some kind of real-time combat system in. All had to be based on either turn-based stuff or it had to be based on hotkey presses. As it turns out, that is not the case. As we've discovered as technology continues to advance, this is a good thing for everybody. Oh no, Captain Canada is dead! Oh man. That's pretty bad, isn't it? You might wonder what we were doing, by the way, with that little cog that comes above them. You can revive someone, you can actually help them rally up. If you get to them within a certain amount of time, you can hold the button down and they can click rally, which will respawn them at their current location with a small amount of health. So pretty much everyone can resurrect in this game as far as I can tell, at least in the outdoor content. I don't know about Dungeon Raid or Duo or anything like that. Like I say, with this game, I think it's not a particularly risky venture to go out and buy the game initially, because you will get your free month. And you will see some content that is enjoyable, and you get access to that great voice acting and the cool, funny stuff that you've seen me do. And there is some variety in terms of the quests, which is good. As regards to endgame, what it appears to have, it's got PvP. The PvP, from what I've been told, is pretty good, but it does seem to suffer somewhat from the fact that stun locking is too powerful, and you have to use your breakout ability. Some people, I think, call it jailbreak or something like that. That's the bit of jargon that's used in this game. Oh, there's Superman as well. You might have noticed Dev Lex Luthor in the background. They were supposed to be battling around this time, but as it turns out, that didn't happen. It might have happened much later, but I was too tired to stay for the time being. But hey, you get to see them. Like I said, the PvP does seem to be bogged down a little bit by stun locking. That's something that they could very well deal with. As regards to what kinds of PvP, well, at low levels you can do Legends PvP, which is great because that's actually balanced. You've got access to these various DC Legends. You can play as famous characters like Batman, Harley Quinn, etc., etc. They've all got their own power sets, and they're sort of balanced around that, and you do get rewards for it. And then, of course, you've got the Ring of War PvP and the outdoor PvP, and if you're playing on a PvP server, then you can be ganked. Nothing stopping you from being ganked, and that's something that you should certainly watch out for. There are PvE servers available as well. So, again, there does look to be quite a lot of variety and potential there. You might also notice, by the way, that most of these characters are bald. That's because apparently we're overloading this server right now, and a lot of the hairstyles weren't loading. This was actually crashing quite a bit, so I don't really know if this is going to be more stable on release. I would imagine so. I really would. They're probably stress testing, and they will modify it, hopefully, so that it works properly on release if you have a large number of people crowding around in an area like this. What I will say, though, very little lag. Bear in mind I'm on an American server. Not a lot of visible lag at all, which is quite nice. The crashes weren't so nice, but hey. What else is there? Well, the raid content. Raid content potentially great. Potentially. It's raid content. What do I know about it? Well, not an awful lot, really. As long as there's plenty available, then that will be helpful. There's also duo content, which appears to be two-man dungeons that are fairly tricky but not crazy. And I know you can do those in order to earn badges to get access to gear and stuff like that. I like the idea of duo content. That's pretty neat. You can get stuff that's more difficult than single player, but not crazy like a raid or whatever. So, there is some availability there. There's also alerts. Alerts are basically dungeons, yeah? You go into the queue for those, you can go in, I imagine, as a group or solo, kind of like a dungeon finder, and you fight your way through various encounters. They seem to be a little bit more dynamic than some of WoW's dungeons, like, there's a lot of different objectives you have to do in order to get through, but they're basically dungeons. And they do exist. I don't know how many there are, though, but at least they're in the game, and hopefully they'll put plenty in there. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of MMOs make is to take, say, ideas from World of Warcraft, but never put enough of them in. Like, for instance, you'll say, oh, right, well, WoW's done really well with dungeons, so we'll put dungeons in too, but we'll only put in, like, 3. And you'll turn around and say, well, that's not enough. You seen how many dungeons WoW has? Well, that's why WoW's dungeons are so successful, because they have so many. Same with raid content. Well, we're going to put some raids in. How many? 2. Not enough. Once again, this ain't Wrath of the Bloody Lich King. You can't get away with that nonsense anymore. You have to have enough content in there that you can do it on a regular basis, because if you want a subscription-based game, you need people to come back and actually play it. There goes another error message. Yeah, you've seen cuts of the footage like crash, crash, error, crash. I was able to get past that one, but hey. So, if you don't have the content there to keep people playing on a regular basis, then they won't do that, and your game will just die like, well, everything else. I'd like to give an example, actually. Star Trek Online. Star Trek Online was a game that had tons of potential and fell short on a wide variety of different possible elements, and one of those would be what was available at endgame. People blitzed through the content incredibly fast, ended up at the maximum level, and then suddenly there was nothing for them to do, other than the stupid-ass crystalline entity fight, occasionally some PvP that was really not all that enjoyable. Yeah, it was pretty farcical, honestly. And that's, once again, an example of an MMO developer not learning from the mistakes of people in the past and not making sure their endgame is sorted out before you go on. Never, ever underestimate just how fast people can get through your content. Just never, ever do that, because it will result in disaster for you. I'm hoping DC Universe hasn't underestimated that. I really do. I mean, SOE are an experienced MMO developer, but I'd also like to point out that a lot of SOE's games have actually failed. They're still running, but they've certainly not set the world on fire. They've got bare minimum of staff. They don't get developed, they don't advance past that, and they've got no marketing budget behind them, and they just barely have a population to speak of. Plenty of them. Their big success has been the EverQuest series. EverQuest did extremely well, continues to exist. EverQuest 2 is doing pretty damn well for itself, and it's not a bad game either. But then again, look at things that I did very much enjoy and just didn't get the support they needed in order to succeed. PlanetSide. Prime example. I was there when they killed it. And by killed it, I mean ruined it with those frickin' mechs. Oh my... Oh... That still leaves a black stain on my heart, ladies and gentlemen. That was one of my first real MMOs after I stopped playing mods and started playing things with graphics. And you know what? Wow, it was such a great game at the time. Considering going back at some point, maybe getting a little bit of a revival on for a couple of weeks, that would be kind of neat. But they have had a lot of failures. Star Wars Galaxies did pretty well for a time, and then they made changes, and then things sort of got out of hand. It didn't work out so well. So it's not really what I'd call a success now. Pirates of the Burning Sea, not exactly successful either. A lot of other things that just didn't quite work out the way they should have. I mean, Vanguard was a complete freaking disaster. That didn't work at all. But they have gathered a lot of experience in the meantime, and DC does seem to be a good game from what I've seen. It's got the fundamentals of being a good game. It did hook me in very quickly. It has a strong starting zone, it's got a strong narrative and a strong combat system. It does have some fairly good ideas backing it up by the looks of it. It's difficult for me to tell you, go pick this game up, or don't pick this game up, because you can't review an MMO by playing 3 or 4 hours of it. You just can't. You cannot do it. There is so much content, and what really matters about most MMOs is the end game and whether or not you will play it beyond the first month. It's the problem I had with Star Trek Online. I didn't play that past the first month. Indeed, why would I? Ugh. Don't even get me started with these guys. So apparently as their end of beta event, they brought in level 60 avatars that killed everything. We were not all that amused. It wasn't that fun to deal with these, I'll tell you that for a fact. Oh dear. Everybody respawns. There you go. I certainly think it's worth a bash. I don't know if they're coming out with a trial at the start. I mean, if they come out with a trial, then there you go. That's easy enough, but a lot of MMO games don't do that now. You want to know why? It's quite simple. They want to make money from the initial sales of the box copy of the game. And to me, I always feel that that's a little bit of weak sauce. Now, I understand recouping some of your investment early on and getting a big lump sum, but bear this in mind. Yeah? If you make your game solid, and you make it so that it's got multiple months worth of content and people will actually play, then you can afford to give them a trial to give them confidence, because people get gun shy now. How many MMOs have fallen by the wayside? So very many. It's now getting very risky to buy an MMO because more often than not, the MMO will not work out the way that you want it. I mean, of the Western MMOs that have been released, obviously WoW is the strongest. You've then got stuff like RuneScape, which is free to play. Got a lot of free to play accounts, as well as a fair number of subscriptions. That's been around forever, though. And then you've also got stuff like Warhammer Online, which is certainly not dead, but it's not amazingly successful either. Lord of the Rings Online and DDO Online, both very good games. DDO Online, what am I saying? Dungeons & Dragons Online. So good we named it twice. God, think not. Whatever the case. They've both gone free to play. And some of you might view that as defeat, but not really. I mean, DDO has a lot of players now, and it's actually really strong in terms of its content. And I will forever defend that game, because while it sucked on launch, Turbine really pulled out all the stops and made it a great dungeon game. Really big fan of DDO. If I had the time to play it, I would continue to play it. I do have an account, I do have characters on DDO. I enjoyed it an awful lot. And actually, DDO is quite similar to this game in terms of how its combat works. Very hack and slashy, although this game puts a lot more emphasis on the hack and slash, whereas DDO has hack and slash as one of your main damage sources, but it does rely an awful lot on hotkey abilities as well. And that game's all instanced. Yeah, this really isn't. You've got this open world bit in the 2 cities, and while I imagine they will eventually instance those cities if there's too many people going in them, for the most part they are very large. Yeah. Which is good. It's not just like you have a lobby where everyone is hanging out and then you go into the city and suddenly it's your own private instance. That's not how it is. And I don't know, some people really like it being instanced because they're not having to compete for quest mobs. Some people don't. Some people like the proper feel of questing with other people and seeing other people running around and things like that and having a real thriving live city. This game seems to break that down very well and seems to instance when necessary and keep it nice and open when not. But again, recommendation. I don't feel right giving you, my subscribers, a endorsement or a yes or no on a product that I have not played enough of to give a sound judgment. It's not right, you know? It's the same reason when I do my WTFs, usually I will come to a conclusion, but I won't say outright, oh, you need to buy this, or you don't, or whatever. Because it's like, I've played the game for half an hour to an hour. I'm not in any position to properly judge that. It's so incredibly irresponsible. And now, to me, the WTF videos are, one, for entertainment, and two, to give you kind of like a demo, a first impressions. It might sway your purchase decision, but it's just to help inform you a little bit as to what the game is actually all about. Not to say whether or not it's amazingly good. Sure, I can point out some problems that I find initially with it, which might make or break your purchase decision, but I would certainly hope that you guys don't go out solely on that basis and buy full-price games. I suppose it's fairly fortunate that I usually don't do it on full-price games. I do it on fairly cheap indie titles. The problem with a full-priced MMO is that can I really give that kind of judgment on something that I haven't played more than 5 or 6 hours on? No, I can't. I just can't do it. I couldn't, in all good conscience, give you that info. I mean, I can always say, hey, sure, come and play it with me, or whatever, and get some people to play it with. I don't even know if I want to start a guild in this, honestly. I will definitely play after launch. This is what people keep asking. Are you playing after launch? Yes. Will there be more Totalbiscuit content? Yes, absolutely. No doubt. I will happily play the game for you and sort of let's play it, provide you with a little bit of entertainment because people like to see it. It depends how popular the series is after launch. I mean, if it massively drops off in popularity to the point where it's not worth doing and people really want to just watch something else, then cool, I'll stop doing it. But I do think there is certainly a place for that kind of content. The DC Universe series has been extremely popular up until this point. It's been certainly one of my most popular series that I've ever put out, aside from the Cataclysm beta stuff and Azeroth Daily. So people obviously want to see it, but it comes down to, hey, do you want to see it after the game is released, or are you just watching it because it's stuff that you don't have access to? I don't know. No real way to ever tell, is there? And I mean, I did my leveling content after the game came out, or with, say, you know, when the Cataclysm changes came into the game, the Shattering came in, and then I did some big content on the Stone Talon level. People watched that, even though they had access to it. So, I don't know. I just do not know. Oh, my first PvP kill. There you go. I had help. What can I say? Well, it's been fun. It really has. It's been a lot of fun playing. I haven't encountered a lot of frustration. I'll certainly play after launch. And bear this in mind, folks. There's no need to jump on the bandwagon at the very start. You're really not missing out on an awful lot. It's not that kind of game for when I can tell you can take your time, you can enjoy the content that way. So, if you're not feeling like you want to invest initially, hang fire on it. Just watch some more of my videos and then maybe make a purchase decision when you feel confident in it. Or don't. That's just the way of it. I'll still provide you the content so that you can watch it and continue to enjoy the experience. Okay, folks, that was what was left of my DC Universe footage from last night. It's been fun. Looking forward to the launch, which is happening on the 11th, which is Tuesday. It's coming out for PS3 and PC. Not coming out for 360. It is a Sony game. Simple answer to that. Look forward to hopefully seeing a few of you online when it launches. I'll see you next time.